Captain Jason Holt had seen it all. The vastness of space, the grinding weight of command, the endless battles for survival in a galaxy filled with endless conflict. Yet nothing in his experience had prepared him for the meeting he was about to have with the ruling elite of the Shirazi Empire. He had spent the last few years fighting on behalf of the Galactic Coalition, protecting human colonies from the ever-expanding reach of alien empires. The Shirazi, one of the most powerful and enigmatic factions in the galaxy, had been no different. Their forces had clashed with humans more times than he could count, and each skirmish ended with human blood spilled on foreign soil. But today was different. Jason stood at the edge of the Grand Chamber, staring out at the alien world beyond. The Shirazi home planet, Shirath, was a sight to behold. Its towering crystal structures glistened under a red sun, and the city sprawled out across vast landscapes, each one more intimidating than the last. He had never seen a world so full of grandeur and cold beauty. Yet, despite the Empire's outward appearance of power and civilization, Jason knew better than to trust what lay beneath the surface. He had been called to this meeting not as a conqueror, but as an honored guest. The Shirazi, it seemed, had a proposition for him. A sudden voice pulled him from his thoughts. "Captain Holt, the council is waiting for you." Jason turned to see an emissary, a tall and elegantly dressed Shirazi, standing in the doorway. Without a word, he nodded and followed the envoy into the heart of the Empire's council chamber. Inside, the room was opulent, adorned with alien artifacts and shimmering metals. The Shirazi council members sat in elevated seats, their glowing eyes studying Jason as he entered. The alien species had always fascinated him. They were tall, slender beings, their skin a pale shade of green, almost translucent. Their culture was old, ancient even, but their methods of control were something Jason had come to know all too well. The head of the council, Virak, a high-ranking Shirazi general, greeted him with a slow nod.
"Captain Holt, welcome to Shirath. It is an honor to have you here."
Jason remained standing. "I didn't come here for pleasantries, Virak. What is it you want from me?" Virak smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. "We are aware of your service to the Galactic Coalition.
You have fought valiantly in the recent wars. We wish to reward you."
Jason raised an eyebrow. "A reward? After everything that has happened between us, you want to offer me something?" The general's smile didn't falter. "Yes, Captain. We offer you 2 of our finest women, as promised in the treaties of old. They will be yours to command, a gift for your bravery." Jason's eyes narrowed. The offer seemed too generous, too convenient. He had read about the Shirazi traditions, their penchant for using power to control others. They often offered such rewards to men they wanted to manipulate. It was a form of control disguised as generosity. He looked across the council, studying the faces of those who had made this offer. They expected him to accept, to be flattered. They thought he would be like every other man, eager to claim his prize. But Jason was different. He had never been one to play by anyone else's rules. Jason took a step forward, his voice steady. "I didn't fight for prizes, Virak. I fought for my people. And I don't need any gifts from you to know what I've done. What you've offered me—"
"It means nothing."
The room grew still. The Shirazi looked taken aback by his response. Virak's smile wavered for a fraction of a second before he regained his composure. "You insult us, Captain," he said coldly. "These women are of the highest rank in our society. To refuse them is an affront." Jason stood his ground.
"I'm not interested in your women. What I want is justice." The words hung heavy in the air.
Jason had made his stance clear, but the Shirazi were not accustomed to hearing demands for justice from anyone, let alone a human. Virak's eyes glinted, his expression hardening. "You speak of justice? What do you know of it?" Jason met his gaze, unflinching. "I know enough. I know about the countless human colonies you've burned to the ground, the families you've torn apart. You think you can buy me with your gifts, but I'm not that easily swayed." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, Virak slowly stood, his posture regal, his voice calm. "You are bold, Captain Holt, perhaps too bold for your own good. But I admire your spirit.
You will have your justice then. You shall face the council and present your demands."
We will see if the galaxy agrees with you. Jason didn't flinch.
I'll make sure the galaxy knows the truth. I'm not here to make deals.
I'm here to end the suffering you've caused. As Virak motioned for the guards to escort Jason out, the human felt a flicker of something inside him. The Girassi believed they had the power to control everything, to manipulate even the strongest men. But they had underestimated him. Jason wasn't here to play their game. He was here to change the rules. As the doors closed behind him, Jason couldn't help but think about the women they had promised him. Lyra and Vishara, they had no say in this arrangement. They were just pawns in a game they never asked to play. He would make sure they knew the truth, that they weren't prizes to be claimed. He couldn't help but feel a sense of resolve growing within him. The road ahead would be dangerous. The Girassi would not let him walk away unscathed, but he had made a promise to the families of the colonies who had lost their homes, their loved ones, and he would see that promise fulfilled. As he stepped into the transport that would take him back to his ship, Jason looked out at the sprawling city of Zyrath once more. The Girassi had ruled with fear and intimidation for too long. It was time for that to end. He was no hero. He didn't want fame or accolades, but he would fight for what was right, for justice, and if the Girassi couldn't understand that, then they would have to learn the hard way. The galaxy had been silent for too long. Jason Holt was going to make sure that silence was broken. Jason sat quietly in the command center of his ship, the Resolute, staring at the blinking lights on the console in front of him. The room was dimly lit, with only the soft hum of the ship's engines filling the air. His crew, a group of seasoned veterans who had fought with him through countless battles, sat nearby, waiting for him to speak. Jason had called them all here for a reason. His refusal of the Girassi offer was just the beginning. Now it was time for the real work to begin. "We have to move quickly," Jason said, his voice calm but firm. "The Girassi won't let this go easily. They'll try to discredit us, undermine everything we stand for. But we're not here for power. We're here for justice." His words hung in the air, and the crew exchanged glances. Jason had been their leader for years, and they trusted him. But this was different. The Girassi were one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy, and going up against them would be dangerous. There was no turning back now, though. Jason's decision was final. "We need to send a message," he continued, turning toward his first officer, Lieutenant Rita Sharp. "I want you to send a secure message to the Galactic Council."
We're going to present our demands, not just for reparations or the release of prisoners, but for a full investigation into the Girassi Empire's war crimes.
"The truth has to come out." Rita nodded. "Understood, Captain, but we'll need support. The Council won't act without evidence. The Girassi have been in power for so long, and there are plenty of people who'll defend them. We'll need more than just our word." Jason stood up, pacing back and forth. "We've been gathering intelligence on their activities for years. The atrocities they've committed, destroyed colonies, enslaved populations, and manipulated countless species, are all documented. We just need to get that evidence in front of the Council. And when we do, we'll make sure the Girassi can't escape their guilt." His crew listened carefully. They knew the stakes. The Girassi were not a foe to be underestimated. But Jason had always led them with a sense of purpose, and this mission was no different. He wasn't just fighting for a cause. He was fighting for something more personal. Justice for the people who had suffered under the Girassi's rule. Jason paused by the viewport, looking out into the vast expanse of space. His mind wandered to the two women the Girassi had promised him, Lyra and Vishara. He had learned a little about them during the brief meeting, Both were from noble families, their status among the highest in Shirasi society. But to Jason they were no more than pawns in the Girasi's game. They hadn't asked for any of this. They were as much victims as anyone else. Jason's thoughts were interrupted by Commander Kale, a grizzled veteran who had been with him since the early days of the war. "Captain, we've intercepted a communication from the Izarasi. They want to meet with us again."
It's an ultimatum. They're demanding you come back to Shirath to discuss the matter in person.
Jason turned to face the commander. His expression was unreadable, but his mind was already working. "They think they can intimidate me into submission. They don't understand what they're dealing with."
I'm not here for their games. I'll go, but not to negotiate.
"I'm going to show them what it means to face justice." Kale raised an eyebrow. "You're walking into the heart of the beast, Captain. The Zirasi won't be merciful."
I know, Jason replied.
"But it's the only way. If we're going to take them down, we need to expose them for what they really are. I won't be intimidated. I won't back down. And neither should any of you." His crew nodded, their resolve strengthening. They had fought together through countless battles, and this was no different. They would follow Jason, no matter the risk. Jason turned to his communications officer, Petty Officer Lang. "Send the response. We'll meet them on their terms, but we'll make sure the council is watching. We'll record everything." Lang nodded, quickly typing commands into the console. "Message sent, Captain. They'll be expecting us." Jason walked over to the tactical display, where a map of the galaxy flickered on the screen. He zoomed in on the Girasi capital, Giraffe, a world that seemed both beautiful and dangerous. The capital was heavily fortified, surrounded by layers of defense, and protected by an entire fleet of warships. Jason's eyes narrowed. This wasn't going to be easy. "We have one shot at this," Jason said, his voice steady. "Once we're in the council chamber, we'll present our evidence, and we'll make sure the Zirasi can't deny what they've done. They think they can buy us, control us. But this ends now. We'll show the galaxy that humanity isn't just a pawn in their game." The room was silent, and then Rita spoke. "What about Lyra and Vashara? What do we do about them?" Jason paused, considering the question. "We'll give them a choice. They don't have to be part of this. But we'll make sure they know the truth. If they want to stay in the Shirasi Empire, that's their decision. But if they want freedom, they can have it." Jason had no illusions about the women the Shirasi had promised him. They were not his to command. They were not prizes to be won. He had no desire for a political marriage, especially not one that was forced upon them. If they wanted to stay with the Zirasi, that was their choice. But Jason was going to make sure they knew they had options. Freedom. Justice. A future where they weren't bound by the shackles of the Empire's power. He turned back to his crew. "Prepare the ship for departure. We'll leave for Zyrath at once. We don't have much time." The crew sprang into action, each one moving with purpose. As the ship powered up and began its journey toward the Zirasi homeworld, Jason sat down at the command chair, his mind focused. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. He wasn't going to let the Shirasi Empire get away with their crimes. Not on his watch. Hours passed, and as the Resolute approached Shirath, Jason felt a weight settle over him. He had never been one to fear confrontation, but this was different. This wasn't just a battle for survival. This was a battle for something far more important. Justice. He walked to the observation deck, looking out at the approaching planet. The Shirasi capital loomed ahead, its massive structures rising like jagged peaks against the skyline. Jason's mind wandered again to Lyra and Vashara. He wondered if they even knew what the Empire had planned for them. He hoped they would see the truth. He hoped they would choose freedom over control. The moment of truth was coming. Jason knew that the Shirasi would fight to protect their empire. They would not let him expose their crimes without a struggle. But Jason was ready. He had fought for humanity before, and he would do it again. This time, though, it wasn't just about defending his people. It was about standing up for those who couldn't stand up for themselves. Lyra, Vashara, the people of the colonies, and anyone else the Shirasi had wronged. As the ship prepared to enter the planet's atmosphere, Jason turned to face his crew. No matter what happens, we're doing the right thing. This isn't just about us anymore. It's about everyone who's been oppressed by the Shirasi. We're going to make sure their reign of terror ends today. The crew nodded in unison, ready for whatever came next. They trusted Jason, and they would stand with him until the end. The Resolute descended toward Sirath, its mission clear. Justice was on the horizon, and Jason Holt was ready to see it through. The Resolute entered the atmosphere of Sirath with a heavy thud. The ship's hull shuddered slightly under the pressure, but it remained steady. Jason Holt stood at the front of the command deck, his eyes fixed on the planet below. The planet that represented the power, control, and cruelty of the Shirasi Empire. He felt the weight of the moment on his shoulders. The stakes were higher now than they had ever been. "We're coming in hot," Rita Sharp, the ship's first officer, called out from the navigation console.
"There's no turning back now."
Jason didn't respond immediately. His thoughts were elsewhere. He had been to many battlefronts, faced many enemies. But this felt different. The Shirasi were not just an enemy. They were a symbol of everything Jason had fought against in the galaxy. Their cruelty, their manipulation, their arrogance. It had to stop. He turned to face the crew. "Prepare yourselves. This is the moment we've been working toward. Whatever happens, we're doing it for the people we've lost, for the ones we're still fighting for. We're not here to make deals. We're here to make them answer for what they've done." Rita nodded, her expression grim.
Understood, Captain.
"We'll follow your lead." Jason's eyes briefly shifted to the communications officer, Lang, who was monitoring incoming signals.
"Any word from the Shirasi yet?"
Lang looked up, his face unreadable.
"They're expecting us. They want us to land at the Imperial landing zone."
"The Shirasi Council's representatives will meet us there." Jason's jaw tightened. The Council. The ones who were responsible for all the decisions. The ones who believed they could control everything with just a word. But Jason wasn't intimidated. He had faced powerful enemies before, and he wasn't about to back down now. "Let's land," Jason said, his voice calm but filled with determination. "We'll go to the Council and lay it all out. They won't be able to deny us this time." The Resolute touched down on the surface of Giraffe, the landing gear making a soft thud as it met the ground. The Shirasi capital sprawled before them, its crystalline towers rising high into the sky. The architecture was grand, almost otherworldly, but there was a coldness to it, a sense of oppression that hung over everything. The air outside the ship was thick and humid, and Jason could feel the weight of it as he stepped onto the landing pad. His boots made a dull sound against the metal floor, and his crew followed him closely. They were ready for whatever came next. As they walked toward the waiting transport, Jason could see the Shirasi representatives standing in a neat line. They were tall, their skin a pale shade of green, their eyes glowing with an eerie light. They were regal, commanding, and yet there was something unsettling about them. The way they carried themselves, the way they seemed to look down on him and his crew. It reminded Jason of everything that was wrong with the Shirasi Empire. Virak, the Shirasi general who had first made the offer to Jason, stood at the front of the group. His face was calm, almost unreadable, but Jason could see the faintest glimmer of annoyance in his eyes. "Captain Holt," Virak said, his voice smooth and measured, "we're glad you could join us. We've been expecting you." Jason didn't bow or acknowledge the greeting. Instead, he simply met Virak's gaze with a steady, unwavering stare. "I didn't come here to be welcomed. I came here to put an end to your empire's lies and your corruption." Virak's expression didn't change, but Jason could tell he was taken aback by the boldness of his words. You misunderstand, Captain. This is an opportunity for you. The Zirasi Empire offers you a chance to gain power, status, everything you could ever want. All you need to do is accept the gifts we've offered you. Jason's fists clenched at his sides. I don't want your gifts. I want justice. The people you've oppressed, the lives you've destroyed, how can you live with yourselves? The words hung in the air, and for a moment there was a silence between them. The Shirasi representatives exchanged glances, but none of them spoke. Finally, Virak spoke again, his voice colder this time. You speak of justice, but you do not understand the nature of power. The Shirasi have built this empire for millennia. We are the ones who determine the fate of the galaxy, not you. Jason's voice remained calm, but it was filled with a quiet strength. You think you can control everything with fear and manipulation. You think you can silence anyone who dares to challenge you, but you're wrong. We're not afraid of you. And we won't be silenced. Virak's eyes narrowed, and he stepped forward, his voice growing colder. You are treading dangerous ground, Captain Holt. The Shirasi do not take kindly to threats. If you continue this path, you will regret it. Jason didn't flinch. You're right, I'm treading dangerous ground. But it's ground that needs to be walked. You think you can control everything, but the truth is, the galaxy is waking up. The people are tired of being oppressed, tired of being controlled by empires like yours. This isn't just about us anymore. It's about all the people you've hurt, all the lives you've ruined. The tension between them was thick enough to cut with a knife. Jason could feel the weight of the moment, but he stood tall, unwavering. This was his fight, and he wasn't going to back down now. Virak stared at him for a long moment before speaking again.
Very well, Captain. If you want to speak of justice, then we will listen.
But be warned, our patience has limits. You may not like what you hear. Jason didn't answer. Instead, he turned and motioned for his crew to follow him into the transport. The doors closed behind them, and they were on their way to the Shirasi Council chambers. As the transport moved through the city, Jason couldn't help but take in the sights around him. The Shirasi had built an empire on the backs of countless species, exploiting their resources, their labor, their very lives. And now they believed they could simply brush aside the consequences of their actions. Jason would make sure they couldn't hide from it any longer. The transport landed in front of a towering building, its sleek design a symbol of the Shirasi's power and wealth. Jason and his crew stepped out, and they were immediately met by more Shirasi guards, their faces cold and impassive. They walked through the grand hallways, the walls lined with intricate carvings and alien art. It all seemed to mock them. The grandeur, the excess, the belief that the Shirasi could have it all while others suffered. Jason's heart hardened. This was what he was fighting against. The lies, the manipulation, the cruelty. They entered the council chamber, a massive room filled with high-ranking Shirasi officials. The air was thick with tension, the weight of their gazes heavy on Jason's shoulders. He didn't flinch. He didn't look away. Virak motioned for him to speak, and Jason stepped forward, his voice carrying across the room. I'm not here to beg for your forgiveness. I'm not here to ask for your mercy. Mabe, tell him, I'm here to make you answer for your crimes. The people you've oppressed, the families you've destroyed. They deserve justice.
And I'm going to make sure they get it.
The room was silent, the weight of his words settling in. The Shirasi were used to being the ones in control, used to being the ones who dictated the terms. But Jason wasn't afraid. He was here to turn the tables, to make them understand that humanity wasn't going to sit back and let their crimes go unpunished. For the first time, the Shirasi looked uncertain. They had underestimated Jason Holt. And now, they were going to pay the price for it. The council chamber was silent as Jason stood before the Shirasi leaders, his eyes burning with a resolve that none of them had expected. He had come to expose the truth, to make them answer for the atrocities they had committed against countless colonies. The air was thick with tension, the weight of the moment pressing down on everyone in the room. Jason knew this was the moment of reckoning, not just for the Shirasi Empire, but for the entire galaxy. "You stand here, Virak," the general who had first made the offer to Jason said in a calm, cold voice, demanding justice, as if you can change the order of the universe with a few words. "You speak of oppression, but you fail to see the truth. The Shirasi Empire is built on power, on the strength to maintain peace. Without us, there would be chaos." Jason's gaze never wavered. Peace at the cost of countless lives, peace built on fear and domination. That's not peace. That's control. You've destroyed colonies, enslaved innocent beings, and forced people into submission. You've built an empire on the backs of the weak, and now it's time for you to face the consequences. The room stirred with murmurs, but Virak remained unshaken. "You think you can bring down an empire with your words, Captain? You speak as if you know what it takes to rule, to maintain order. You've only scratched the surface. You don't understand the complexities of the universe." Jason took a step forward, his voice steady but filled with a quiet strength.
I understand that you've made people suffer for far too long.
"And I won't stand by and let it continue." He turned to the Shirasi Council, addressing them directly. "The truth has been hidden for far too long. The people you've oppressed, the lives you've destroyed, they have names, they have faces, and they won't be forgotten." Jason's crew stood behind him, silent but resolute. They knew the gravity of the situation, but they also knew that this was a fight worth having. Jason wasn't just fighting for himself or for his people. He was fighting for everyone who had been silenced, for those who had been crushed under the weight of the Shirasi Empire's rule. Virak's expression hardened, and he glanced around the room at the other council members. For the first time, there was a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. "You've made your point, Captain. But do you really think the galaxy will stand with you? The Shirasi Empire is not so easily overthrown. You are but one man." Jason met his gaze, unwavering. "I'm not alone. There are millions out there who want justice.
And they'll stand with me. They're already waking up."
"The truth will spread, and you won't be able to stop it. The galaxy is tired of empires like yours. The age of fear and manipulation is over." The council remained silent, the weight of Jason's words sinking in. He knew they had no real power to stop him. The truth was on his side, and that was something they could never erase. Virak stood tall, his gaze cold. "Perhaps, but we will not allow you to disrupt the peace we have built. You will leave now, or we will have no choice but to take action." Jason didn't flinch. "You've had your chance. The time for negotiation is over. It's time for justice." With that, he turned to Rita Sharp. "Activate the transmission." It's time the galaxy heard the truth. Rita nodded, quickly tapping into the ship's communications system. The feed was sent directly to the Galactic Council and several independent news networks that had been monitoring the situation. Jason had made sure that the evidence was ready. Documents, recordings, testimonies, all of it, gathered over years of working in the shadows, waiting for this moment. The Shirasi could no longer hide their crimes. Jason returned his attention to the council, watching as the live feed of the transmission appeared on the screens in front of him.
"This is the truth. The Shirasi Empire has hidden it for long enough, but it's time for the galaxy to see who you really are."
The feed played, showing images of destroyed colonies, families torn apart, and records of Shirasi officials orchestrating the oppression of countless species. It was undeniable. The evidence was irrefutable. Jason turned back to Virak, his voice firm. "You've failed. The truth is out now.
The galaxy will know what you've done.
The room fell into a stunned silence. Virok's eyes flickered with rage, but he said nothing. The Shirasi leaders looked at each other, their faces a mix of disbelief and fear. For the first time, Jason saw the cracks in their armor. You thought you could control the truth, Jason continued, his voice unwavering. But truth is like light. It always finds a way through the darkness. Your empire is built on lies, and those lies are crumbling. You can't stop it, no matter how hard you try. Virok stepped forward, his voice a low growl. You think you've won? This isn't over. The Shirasi will rise again. Jason didn't back down. You've lost. The people of the galaxy won't stand for you anymore. You'll have to answer for your crimes. And when they come for you, there will be no place left for you to hide. The tension in the room was thick, and Jason could feel the eyes of the council members on him. He had won this battle. The Shirasi Empire had been exposed for what it truly was, and there was no turning back. The galaxy would never look at them the same way again. With a final, determined glance at Virok and the rest of the council, Jason turned and walked out of the chamber. His crew followed closely behind, their faces set with the same determination. They had done it. They had brought down an empire. As Jason stepped back onto the Resolute, he felt a sense of relief wash over him. The battle wasn't over, not by a long shot. But this was a victory for the people who had been silenced, for the families who had been torn apart, a victory for justice. He turned to his crew, a small smile breaking through his usually stern expression. We've done it. The Shirasi Empire will never be the same. And neither will the galaxy. Rita Sharp nodded, her expression proud. You did it, Captain. You gave them the truth they couldn't hide from. Jason glanced at the horizon, watching as Shirath faded into the distance. The road ahead would be long and there would be challenges. But for the first time, Jason felt a sense of hope. He had stood up for what was right, and in doing so, he had changed the course of history. The galaxy was watching, and now they would know that humanity would no longer bow to the will of empires like the Shirasi. They would fight for justice, and they would never stop.